We're counting down the 12 craziest Cold War weapon projects ever conceived, ranked from early atomic breakthroughs to automated doomsday machines. These aren't just oversized bombs. Every entry pushed the limits of science, secrecy, and sanity, from covert tunnel cities and nuclear-powered tanks to animal-based spy gear and devices that could end civilization without human input. Each item earned its spot for shocking scale, bizarre engineering, or world-shaking risk, always grounded in declassified files and official reports. Some of these ideas sound like science fiction, except every project on this list was really built or seriously planned. Which weapon takes the S tier for sheer apocalyptic potential? Let's begin with number 12, the origin of nuclear escalation itself. Number 12 sets the stage with the Manhattan Project's Trinity test. On July 16, 1945, in the New Mexico desert, scientists detonated the world's first atomic bomb. The blast unleashed an estimated 21 kilotons of explosive force, lighting up the dawn and vaporizing the steel tower in an instant. This single explosion marked the birth of the nuclear age, transforming theoretical physics into a weapon that could flatten a city. The shockwave from Trinity didn't just ripple through the desert. It sent governments worldwide scrambling to understand and contain this new power. Within weeks, the technology fueled the attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forcing the world to confront the reality of atomic warfare. The legacy of Trinity still echoes in every arms treaty and nuclear doctrine that followed. Every weapon on this tier list traces its origins back to this moment. Number 11 brings the world's first thermonuclear misfire, Castle Bravo. On March 1, 1954, the United States set off what was supposed to be a 5-megaton test on Bikini Atoll. Instead, a chemical surprise in the lithium deuteride fuel rocketed the yield to 15 megatons. The blast instantly became the largest US nuclear detonation on record, 3 times more powerful than planned. Fallout drifted far beyond the test site, contaminating the Marshall Islands and reaching a Japanese fishing boat, the Lucky Dragon No. 5. DOE and UN fallout maps later showed radioactive debris circling the globe. Marshallese health studies documented severe burns, radiation sickness, and long-term cancers. Castle Bravo forced the world to confront the dangers of scaling up nuclear weapons so quickly. Public outrage and diplomatic fallout pushed the US and Soviet Union toward the partial test ban treaty. The leap from kiloton to megaton wasn't just technical, it was political and deeply human. Number 10 introduces the Davy Crockett, the smallest nuclear weapon ever fielded by the US Army. In the early 1960s, this bizarre invention put atomic firepower in the hands of a 3-man crew, firing a warhead with a yield as low as 10 tons, barely enough to level a city block. Its range? Just 2 to 4 kilometers. That meant the team launching it might not escape the blast or fallout themselves. Army manuals described the process in painstaking detail, arming the projectile, setting the timer, then running a thin detonating cord out to a safe distance and hoping it was enough. Deployed to West Germany at the height of NATO's fear of a Soviet tank surge, the Davy Crockett was meant to be a last-ditch defense. But war games and after-action reports quickly labeled it a suicide weapon. The paradox was clear: a nuclear rifle so tactical it threatened the very soldiers assigned to use it. Number 9 brings the Chrysler TV-8, America's nuclear-powered tank that never left the drawing board. In 1955, Chrysler engineers proposed an egg-shaped hull, sealed tight to protect the crew from radioactive fallout. The real twist: a compact nuclear reactor crammed inside, meant to power the tank across irradiated battlefields. Official blueprints show a turret packed with heavy shielding, water tanks, and remote control features, all to keep the crew alive if the worst happened. But the safety problems were obvious. Army and IISS analysts quickly flagged the risk. A reactor hit by enemy fire could turn the whole vehicle into a mobile disaster. No prototype ever moved under its own power, and the project stalled at the mock-up stage. The TV-8 stands as proof of just how far the nuclear arms race pushed engineering straight into the territory of science fiction. Its legacy is a curious footnote, not a battlefield revolution. Number 8 brings a weapon project so strange it reads like science fiction. In the mid-1960s, the CIA launched Acoustic Kitty, an attempt to turn a living cat into a mobile surveillance device. The plan involved surgically implanting a microphone in the cat's ear, a transmitter at the base of the skull, and an antenna threaded through its fur. The idea was simple in theory: send the cat to eavesdrop on Soviet diplomats in public spaces, blending in as only a stray could. But the reality was chaos. After years of development and a reported $20 million spent, the first field test ended in disaster. The cat wandered off, ignoring commands, and the project was cancelled in 1967. Declassified CIA memos confirm the program's existence and abrupt end, but not the infamous story of the cat being run over by a taxi, a tale the agency now calls an urban legend. Acoustic Kitty never delivered a single piece of useful intelligence, but it set a new bar for just how far Cold War spy agencies would go in the name of secrecy. The aftermath left the CIA embarrassed and animal rights advocates outraged, fueling decades of debate about ethics in intelligence work. Number 7 introduces Blue Peacock, the British nuclear landmine that nearly brought Cold War absurdity to the German countryside. In 1957, British engineers designed a 10-kiloton atomic demolition mine for burying beneath West German bridges and rail lines, intended to block a Soviet advance by turning key terrain into radioactive wasteland. But the real twist came in the winterization memo. To keep the bomb's electronics from freezing in the harsh German winter, Ministry of Defense planners proposed placing live chickens inside the mine casing. The bird's body heat, according to UK National Archives files, would keep the firing circuits warm for up to a week. It sounds like parody, but official MOD documents confirm the poultry plan was seriously considered. The project's intent was deadly serious: deny territory at any cost, even if that meant contaminating Allied soil and risking fallout drifting back to friendly lines. Blue Peacock was cancelled in 1958, with Defense Council records citing the unacceptable risk of radioactive contamination across Western Europe. Yet the chicken-heated mine stands as a perfect symbol of Cold War improvisation, deadly intent, outlandish solutions, and a willingness to push logic right to the edge. Number 6 introduces the Lung-class Ekranoplan, a Soviet experiment that blurred the line between ship and airplane. Nicknamed the Caspian Sea Monster by US intelligence, this ground-effect vehicle could skim just a few meters above the water at speeds over 300 miles per hour. The Soviets armed it with 6 P-270 Moskit supersonic anti-ship missiles, each designed to punch through carrier battle groups before defenders could react. Naval Archives record its first sea trials in 1987, with a crew of 8 bracing for every wave and crosswind. The Lun's massive hull, over 240 feet long, let it carry missile firepower usually reserved for destroyers, yet it flew low enough to dodge most radar. US satellites first spotted the strange craft in the 1960s, mistaking it for a downed airplane or submerged submarine, until declassified reports finally revealed its purpose. Only one was ever completed, and it never entered full service. The Ekranoplan stands as a bold attempt to rewrite the rules of naval warfare, trading altitude for surprise and speed, but its operational limits kept it from reshaping the Cold War balance. Number 5 exposes the secret underworld of Operation Iceworm. In the late 1950s, the US Army carved a sprawling network of tunnels beneath Greenland's ice sheet, calling it Camp Century. On paper, it was a scientific outpost. In reality, it was the testbed for hiding hundreds of nuclear missiles in a shifting labyrinth, missiles that could be moved undetected beneath the Arctic, ready to strike the Soviet Union. The entire city ran on a portable nuclear reactor, hauled in piece by piece and assembled under the ice. engineers battled constant movement. The ice creaked, tunnels warped, and structures buckled as the glacier shifted several feet each year. By 1966, the project was abandoned, the reactor dismantled, and the tunnels left to collapse. But the story didn't end there. Decades later, studies revealed that toxic waste, diesel, sewage, radioactive coolant, remained sealed in the ice, waiting to resurface as the glacier melts. Danish government cables uncovered the true scope: a covert missile base, built without local consent, with an environmental legacy that still threatens the Arctic today. Operation Iceworm stands as a chilling reminder of Cold War ambition and the hidden costs buried beneath the surface. Number 4 brings Project Pluto, the supersonic low-altitude missile, or SLAM. In the late 1950s, US engineers at Lawrence Livermore set out to build a weapon that defied every rule of sanity and safety. Pluto's core was a nuclear reactor, unshielded and exposed, designed to heat air rushing through at Mach 3. The result was a missile that could fly more than 10,000 miles, hugging the ground to avoid radar and dropping hydrogen bombs across entire continents. But the horror didn't end with its payload. As it flew, Pluto's reactor blasted out a continuous stream of radioactive particles, contaminating everything beneath its path. Department of Energy test logs from Nevada described the engine's Banshee wail and the radioactive exhaust that forced engineers to evacuate the test site. RAND analysts warned that deployment would mean a roaming apocalypse. No safe way to test, no way to stop the fallout. Project Pluto was cancelled in 1964, overtaken by intercontinental ballistic missiles and the terrifying realization that some weapons could poison the world just by flying. Number 3 brings the world to the edge of nuclear disaster, not with a bomb, but a war game. In November 1983, NATO launched Able Archer 83, a routine command exercise designed to simulate escalation all the way to nuclear release. But this time, the signals were different. The exercise used new, highly realistic codes and involved top-level officials, echoing the very steps that would precede an actual launch. Soviet intelligence, already on high alert from Operation Ryan, intercepted these signals and saw a pattern that matched their worst-case scenario. A Western first strike disguised as a drill. Within days, Warsaw-packed forces in East Germany and Poland moved to heightened readiness. Soviet RSD-10 missile units rolled to alert positions, pilots waited on bases, and nuclear submarines shifted beneath Arctic ice. KGB cables described a flash telegram, a warning sent to Soviet leadership that NATO might be preparing to attack. The nuclear briefcase was brought to General Secretary Andropov. For several tense hours, the world depended on interpretation rather than technology. No launch orders were given, but the system was primed. Only restraint from both sides, a decision not to escalate further, kept the exercise from spiraling into Armageddon. Declassified NSA and Warsaw Pact records confirmed just how close the risk ran. A near miss, driven not by malfunction or rogue actors, but by human uncertainty and the fog of war. Able Archer 83 forced both superpowers to confront the danger of miscalculation, shaping the arms control talks that followed. But what comes next makes even this near catastrophe look like a warning shot. Number 2 detonates the largest explosion ever unleashed by human hands: Tsar Bomba. On October 30th, 1961, a specially modified Tu-95 bomber dropped the RDS-220 over Novaya Zemlya. The bomb measured 8 meters long, weighed nearly 27 tons, and carried a 3-stage thermonuclear design. Soviet engineers, led by Andrei Sakharov, originally built it for a 100 megaton yield. But even the Kremlin balked at the risk. Days before the test, Sakharov persuaded leadership to halve the yield by swapping uranium for lead in the final stage. Even so, the resulting blast reached an estimated 50 megatons, over 3,000 times the force of Hiroshima. The fireball spanned nearly 10 kilometers, and the shockwave shattered windows 900 kilometers away. Pilots on the bomber gave themselves less than a 50-50 chance of escaping the blast. Soviet officials called it a political bomb, too massive and unwieldy for actual deployment, but perfect for demonstrating raw power. The mushroom cloud soared above the stratosphere, visible for hundreds of miles. Tsar bomber's detonation forced the world to reckon with the reality that nuclear weapons could now erase entire cities, maybe even civilizations, in a single strike. But for all its scale, Tsar bomber still required a human hand to drop it. What comes next asks, what if the machines took over the trigger? And finally, in first place stands Perimeter, the system the West calls Dead Hand. Conceived in the shadow of the early 1980s, this was the Soviet Union's ultimate answer to the fear of decapitation, a doomsday protocol that could launch a retaliatory nuclear strike even if every leader, every command bunker, every line of communication was already ash and silence. Perimeter's architecture was as cold as its logic. Deep underground command posts connected to seismic and radiation sensors, all wired to detect the unmistakable signatures of a nuclear attack. If the system was armed by human operators, never by accident, only by direct order, it would wait for two signals: proof of incoming warheads and the sudden loss of contact with top command. If both arrived, a special command rocket, the 15A-11, would launch high above Soviet territory, broadcasting coded launch orders to every surviving missile silo and mobile launcher. RAND studies and Russian memoirs confirm the system entered experimental combat duty in the mid-1980s. Its existence was never officially acknowledged in public, and to this day, Russian authorities neither confirm nor deny whether any version remains active. Some analysts believe it lingers in partial standby, modernized and ready to guarantee second strike capability. Others argue it's been mothballed, a relic of apocalyptic logic. But the facts remain. Chilling. Perimeter was designed to automate the end of civilization, removing the final barrier of human judgment from the nuclear equation. The mere possibility of a machine-triggered apocalypse has haunted arms control debates ever since. In the calculus of Cold War deterrence, Perimeter was the ultimate escalation. A system built not to win, but to ensure that if the world ended, it would end everywhere, for everyone. That's the shadow dead hand still casts over the nuclear age. From the Trinity test's first atomic flash to the chilling automation of the Soviet dead hand, this countdown has exposed the full spectrum of Cold War weapon madness. Across all 12 entries, one pattern stands out: escalation, not just in explosive power, but in creativity, secrecy, and sheer audacity. We've seen weapons designed to flatten cities, others meant for absurd tactical use, like nuclear-powered tanks or even chicken-heated landmines, and projects that risked global fallout or accidental apocalypse. The list's shocking top tier, Tsar bomber's 50-megaton blast and Perimeter's Doomsday automation, proves the arms race wasn't just about bigger bombs, but about removing human control entirely. Every project here qualified through documented evidence, ranking by scale, risk, and the logic-defying lengths both sides pursued. In the end, the real story is how technological ambition, fear, and rivalry pushed boundaries far beyond reason. The Cold War's wildest weapons weren't just products of their time. They're a warning about how far nations can go when survival is on the line. Subscribe for more nuclear history and future scenarios.